Welcome to Telegeography Explains the Internet, the show that explores the business behind all of the ways humans stay connected around the world. I'm your host, Greg Bryan, and we are in the midst of a series of episodes all about a topic that is closely associated with telegeography. If you're watching, you can see it over my shoulder, submarine cables. So today's specific topic is about keeping submarine cables secure. My guest to help us work through all of that is Ferris. He's the Chief Information Security Officer at the Trans-American Fiber System. So as you will hear, Ferris has a deep background in network and cybersecurity and can bring a broad perspective to the focus of the submarine cable industry. We cover a lot of ground in this episode, starting with specific threats to submarine cables, how best to build resiliency against them and prepare for them. And then we get into the different regulatory and compliance issues that submarine cable operators face when they're landing in many different countries. We also look at geopolitical threats to submarine cable systems. That is a pretty hot topic, but has been one of concern to the submarine cable industry for a long time. Ferris offers his advice on best practices once you have a breach and how he has seen this go well or maybe not so well in the past. Finally, we look into the future of cybersecurity threats with his assessment of how AI is going to impact submarine cable and network security in general, as well as how to prepare for the eventual possibility of quantum computing. So Ferris was a wealth of information on security, much of it applicable to networks in general, even though our focus was on submarine cables. I learned a lot, and I hope you will as well. Before we get to the interview, please do like and subscribe, find me on LinkedIn, and tell a friend about the show. We very much appreciate your support, and we're always striving to be interactive and receptive of your suggestions. So enjoy. Welcome to the show, Ferris.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Excellent. So before we get started, I wonder if you could just give us a brief background on both yourself, how you came to be the CISO at Transamerica Fiber, and then we'll get into a little bit, of course, about what Transamerican Fiber is. Let's start
Okay.
with you.
Thank you so much. So currently, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Trans America's Fiber. I lead the cybersecurity strategy for one of the most ambitious subsea cable system in the Western Hemisphere. I have over like 2 decades of experience in telecom, finance, and public cybersecurity sector.
Mm-hmm.
So during those 2 decades, I designed and led cybersecurity program that they integrate critical infrastructure protection, zero trust architecture, and regulatory compliance with NIST, ISO, and FCC framework. I'm also a frequent speaker in North America and internationally on emerging threats, resilience, and AI-driven defense. Uh, Now, what drew me to Trans-American Fiber
Mm.
is is kind of opportunity to build security into the next generation submarine cable systems from the ground up. So
Right, right.
you're just building something from the ground up. I think this is very unique opportunity, if you will, and I think only few CISOs they were lucky or have the chance to do so. The TAM one challenges and mission actually they align perfectly with my experience, with my passion, and more importantly, in my belief in that cybersecurity should be embedded into the digital infrastructure from day one. And
Mm-hmm.
that's also I have to be grateful for the CEO of the company of the Trans-American Fiber, Julio Brown, because he is a great believer in cybersecurity and have cybersecurity to be there from day one.
Right. No, I think that's a really interesting way to frame the conversation from the start because it's an overarching theme, not just in what we're talking about, kind of the transport layer, the very foundation of the global telecoms, but all the way up through the network. Of that, for such a long time, security was something that you did afterwards, that you put on top of everything else you've done. I like how you're framing this, that security needs to be a part of the design from the very beginning of the whether it's a cable, whether it's a network, that sort of thing. So I think that's a great way to frame it. So with that in mind, you're working with the TAM1 cable, but all of these sort of topics that we're going to get into, go across the submarine cable world. Let's just start out with some basic education for the audience. What are the key threats that you see and that you're trying to mitigate against for submarine cables specifically?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So the submarine cable systems, as you know, they are the backbone of the global connectivity, and they face, threat actors across three critical domains:
Hmm.
physical, logical, and geopolitical.
Mm.
Because and let's agreed on something. Most of them, when they were designed, they were not designed by today the threats landscape in mind. That we're going to talk
Right.
about more threats, especially when we talk about AI and quantum.
Hmm.
So when we talk about physical threat, we talk about physical damage as accidental damage. We talk about deliberate sabotage. We talk about sometimes cable cut near branching unit. So the cables, they are often unguarded at some shallow depth.
Hmm.
So that's one of the issues. I mean, if we talk about landing station, they are also at high risk because they host the cable termination equipment. And also, if the attackers, if they gain access to those landing stations, they can tamper with those optical
Right.
signal path, and that will degrade the performance and cause damages.
Hmm.
Now, on the logical side, as you know, those threats, because we work with those the submarine cables, they have the NOC, they have the vendor operated management systems, and those are, unfortunately, they use a outdated remote access controls like SSH and Telnet. They don't have any multi-factor authentication, and also sometimes we have outdated firmware. So, and we don't, and sometimes we lack the secure boot capabilities. So those attackers, they can gain the access, they can do DNS manipulation, they can implant malwares and
Hmm.
those transponder management interfaces to compromise the system. And also, there is the risk with when we talk about the east-west lateral movement, if those VLAN segmentation is not there or they are weak. And also, if we talk about a compromised NOC, it could push any malicious software to the optical line
Hmm.
systems, turn off alarms, and also silently compromising the traffic integrity.
Right.
Uh, so from a geopolitical perspective, as you know, those cables they're running through. Sometimes we call it the checkpoints, shock points like Red
Hmm.
Sea. They're exposed to state level interference. Sometimes government they impose some lawful interception requirement, and that will delay the permitting and even compromise the passive network taps. So sometimes we got to that kind of issues, and if we don't have the encryption, then that's going to be a problem of the tapping. So I think the bottom line here, and just to make it in a summary, that when you have a single vulnerability, whether you are missing a firmware signature or unsecured NOC access or even unmonitored vendor API, you can trigger a regional scale outages or traffic manipulation. Because
Hmm.
those cables don't, we should not think about them. They are no longer passive conduits. They are
Right.
more strategical digital backgrounds now, and we have to treat them as such because they are strategic digital battlegrounds as of today.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This It's really interesting. I like bringing those three kind of separate domains in that a lot of cybersecurity folks may not think about all of those at the same time, right? That you have, just in a submarine cable system, it's very different than holistic network cyber because there's just one cable with a landing station and with branching units, like you say, or sometimes going through choke points. So it's such a more focused kind of threat perimeter than say like a whole network that has different problems with having threat perimeters all over the place and that sort of thing. But there's you have this single sort of entity, this cable that's so vulnerable to all of these things. So I think it's fascinating to think about that from the holistic picture of badge swipes at the cable landing station to geopolitical forces and then of course the more sort of over the top, if you will, cyber angle, right? So thinking of that, sort of as a CISO of a new cable system, especially, what do we do to mitigate this? Like, what is your specific strategy?
Yeah, I think let me just go back again to the question of the threats. As a CISO, what worries me about also the shared vendor platforms that we are using for
Mm,
provisioning, for telemetry, and for ticketing, because those shared platforms are the reliance on those third parties. Sometimes they don't have the end-to-end to encryption. They lack the role-based access. So meaning, if there is a breach when one third party or in the supply chain, those could allow the attackers to access the plain data. They can monitor
right.
the traffic and alter any routing policies. Now, what we do, let me start with something I like also to mention all the time when we talk about security. Most security in the industry, they know this terminology, defense in depth. Defense
Mm-hmm.
and depth, I like. It's very important, not just to say it from a design perspective, but even to implement it. And the implementation here in the sub sea cable system, I think it's a bit challenging. But we need to understand that when we build those layers of security, when we say defense and depth, we are protecting the systems in the subsea cable. We are thinking beyond just having firewalls, and we are just more focusing on how we make each layer resilience. When one layer fail, then we got the next layer to work and be more resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Now, physical isolation of the networks remain critical, especially when we talk about the knock and the landing station. So we need to maintain those operational systems to be segmented from the internet, from being an internet
Mm-hmm.
facing. And the access should be very tight when you allow access, whether internally or externally or the third party. So here we are talking about how to tie the control both uh, physically and also digitally.
Mm-hmm.
But, however, is isolation today is enough? I think this is the question that every CISO or everyone working in security he should ask. We should actually embrace the zero trust principles
Mm,
as a mindset. I think should be so. We should verify all the time. Connection. We need to verify. We need to limit access. Why this access is need to know basis. Why we need this person or this account to be privileged access. So we
right.
need to monitor in real time, especially anything including the traffic inside the network, not just at the edges.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I keep saying, well, make it easy, segment, monitor, and verify. Those are the three things I think in my
I like
mind
it.
all the time.
Yeah.
I need to look at how I can make it segmented, how I need to monitor, how I need to verify. Again, don't forget we should not forget about the third party, the fourth parties that they are part of the whole design or the architect. We need to vet those vendors
Mm.
against the geopolitical risk and the supply chain risk and constraint.
Right. So
So
you're talking about it's important. There's not a lot of OEM sort of vendors in the submarine cable business. So really important to go to their security teams, make sure that you're aligned, but also understand if I take your meaning, the sort of long-term prospect of that company, the ownership, the connections they might have, that level of detail.
yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. So the goal here, I mean, we have to bear in mind, and I think the mindset. I'm going to keep talking about it, and this podcast is very important. We need to shift the mindset of people, and even in security, we
Hmm.
need to be focused on not just eliminating every threat, but the focus here how to reduce the risk, how to detect those threats fast, how to recover with minimal disruption. Because this is what we call resilience. Because if somebody tell me, well, yeah, you keep talking about resilience, but what do you mean by resilience? Resilience
Hmm.
saying, well, my mindset should not be focusing on eliminating or
Hmm.
avoiding every risk or threat, but how can I reduce the risk? How I can detect it fast, those
Right.
threats, and then recover with minimal disruption to my operation. Because we're talking here about availability, talk about the customer availability. We are talking about protecting the customer's data. So we need minimal disruption so we can achieve resilience.
That's a great point. There's a couple of things I want to put a pin in there for the audience. Is one that you're talking holistically about part of security just being kind of cable performance, if you will, right? So availability and performance are a part of security because that's part of the customer's reliance on that cable.
Right.
And I think I think that's a really great point. And then two, that we don't live in a world where absolutely every risk can be avoided. It's a question of when the eventual happens. How ready am I? What is my contingency plan? What is my, how do I deal with the inevitable sort of breaches and problems that I'm going to have, rather than just saying, well, I have security in place and that's good enough, and then you're sort of caught like a deer in the headlights when something does happen, right?
Right.
Yeah, excellent. Any before we move on, is there anything else you want to add in terms of the threat and the mitigation, uh, other strategies that you have?
As I said, the strategy is all the time we need to work with the threat risk scenarios. I think it's very
Mhm.
important to work with those scenarios. We need to do a lot of what we call them, like those tabletop exercises. We
Right.
need to be prepared, and this is, I think preparedness is the key or the goal all the time. That we need to be prepared for those such events. How
Hmm.
to how to detect it fast, how to communicate, and being transparent. Now cybersecurity, it's about transparency and trust, right? And we're gonna maybe speak about it later on. But that's it's really the reason why we are building all those programs, is to make sure we are very transparent with our customers. We have an open communication, so we know exactly when it's what's happening, and how we're going to minimize the risk to our customers, how we're going to protect, making sure we are maintaining their availability, maintain, and also protecting their data. So I think that's part of everything we are doing, is the
Hmm.
trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. All right, so then I want to bring in a slightly adjacent topic, right? That from the security threats themselves that from are coming from bad actors, you also have to exist in this regulatory environment. And I think for submarine cables, that's particularly challenging, perhaps because you, by nature, most cables are going to be landing in a variety of different regulatory environments, right? And so, we'll probably focus most on the FCC, for example, because we're in the U.S. This cable originates in the U.S. onto to various countries in the Americas. But just first from a sort of big picture, and this doesn't have to be limited to TAM 1, but from your just experience with cables around the world. Um, what do you need to think about when you're dealing with a bunch of different regulatory agencies that your cable is going to land on, that have different rules, different processes, that sort of thing?
All right, that's a great question. So let me start with, because you mentioned the FCC, and as a
Hmm.
TAM, we need to be in compliance with the FCC regulations. So the FCC, they have a recent notice. They call it a proposed rule making.
Hmm.
They signal a new era, in my opinion, in cybersecurity, because now they are thinking about cybersecurity as a national risk.
Right.
So those regulatory environment around the subsea cable security now is evolving, and they are catching up to the risk, and that's something we were missing in the past. So this FCC recent NPRM, in my opinion, is a clear signal that cybersecurity now and national security has become a top priorities for the critical
Hmm.
infrastructure.
Hmm.
And this FCC, this recent notice of NPRM, they're asking the right questions. That we need to know who has access to those critical infrastructure, to those the cables, and to the equipment. How we verify the trust in the supply chain. What about the third party oversight? What's
Hmm.
the mandatory? And then they are making a mandatory for each company, a mandatory risk management plans. They are asking also for annual compliance certification with this, with the plans and with security. So now they are trying to push us to think more strategically. I think, in my opinion, the FCC, not just about to worry about how we're gonna check a box, how we're gonna become more technical compliance, but it's more about how we are making this global competitiveness in the world. And this is what I'm saying, that the
Hmm.
FCC now, they are leading it. Now, as you mentioned, this is good for us in the Americas, but what about
Right.
internationally? So
Right.
globally, it's not even. That's
Right. Of
what I
course.
can tell
Yeah.
you. So In the Americas here, we are saying it's more robust, more regulated, and we have
Mhm.
more oversight. However, in the other regions, as you mentioned, whether we are talking about internationally, and even in Central America or could be in South America, sometimes enforcement can be less stringent.
Right.
Sometimes it's going to be influenced by each country's interest. So that's going to create blind spot when cables they cross multiple jurisdictions. So that's part of, I would
Hmm.
say, the challenges that we
Right.
have
Right.
today. So the advice here, what we're going to do about the situation, because the cables they are running multiple jurisdiction. Well, don't wait for those local, national, and those countries' regulations to catch up. Stay ahead. How are we going to
Hmm.
stay ahead? By
Hmm.
embedding the security into every layer of the system. Understand more about your geopolitical exposure. Keep the strong partnership you need it with the vendors, your trusted vendors, and with your local government. As I said, resilience is not going to be just about the technical part here or the technical aspect. It has to go beyond about. It's going to be about more how to foster your relationships and the foresight.
Right, right. Yeah, I think certainly it's generally a good idea to stay ahead of the regulators, right? Be even more strict, more sort of resilient than the regulators are demanding, right? So I think it is often the case across many regulated industries, certainly within telecom, that they struggle to sort of keep up with what the industry is doing, especially folks like you who have a finger on the pulse of what the threat actors are up to, right? So that's but then keep that in compliance still, even if you're doing more, so, just keep that in compliance with whatever the regulators are asking for. Do you see you kind of touch on this, but to dive a little deeper, do you see any big difference between how that plays out in the Americas versus working elsewhere in the world, whether you're landing in Europe, especially the Middle East, Africa, places like that?
Yeah, I told you the. Sometimes it's not about. I mean, I think in the Americas we are very unique about having the design catch up, and those designs with FCC they kind of align with NIST, right? So if you
Hmm.
apply, so sometimes you kind of say, well, how I'm gonna achieve FCC
Hmm.
compliance by saying, well, NIST, just align yourself with NIST, and NIST
Right.
it's gonna help you from a framework perspective. Uh, it's not going to be 100%, but at least let's say 80 to 90% is going to help you. So that's a
Hmm.
good start. Now, if we're talking about internationally, about Africa, Middle East, or somewhere else, sometimes as I'm telling you, still the maturity is not there from a regulation
Right.
perspective to catch up
Right.
with cybersecurity. So you cannot wait to be in compliance, or sometimes the compliance there from a high level perspective from our regulators, but they are not spelling out the details that we have with the FCC. It's make it much easier to know exactly what the regulator is looking for. So sometimes the
Hmm.
design is there from high level. It's a bit ambiguous, but it's not clear how you're gonna achieve it, and
Hmm.
which means you have to do a lot of your own personal interpretation about it and do more, I think, more work to
Right.
be in compliance. And sometimes, as I told you, the enforcement is not there. It's just basically could be basic in each jurisdiction interest and the way how they're gonna see it. So it's not really stringent. In Europe, for sure, they have more. I think they are like us here in the Americas. They have more from a compliance perspective. They are more stringent with
Right.
with their regulations, and they. I think if I mentioned about GDPR and some of the stuff like this, they are very from a general perspective. I mean, they're strict when they put fines on those big giant tech, tech like Google. When something
Hmm.
happened, and when those companies they fail to protect the customers' data, for example. So as you can see, it's very. You can have the base to work on it, but internationally, it's very challenging.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. But the upshot for talking about, like, the U.S., since that's where this, like I said, this cable is sort of based. That not just looking at the FCC regulations, but looking to NIST, who does work on cybersecurity anyway. So I think that's a really good point. That there's many different places to look for these things, not just to be sort of focused on compliance alone, right? So
Right.
yeah. Yeah. All right. So we've talked about the threats, the strategies to mitigate them, compliance. Let's talk about when the inevitable happens and there is a breach, right? So obviously we're trying to avoid security breaches. Um, at some point they are likely to happen. They certainly have to many high profile organizations out there. What do you do to structure your plan to include this possible eventuality, and maybe give us some of your thoughts on when you've seen this happen well or poorly out there in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think we mentioned earlier you cannot prevent every breach, and this is a mindset should be, in my opinion, a top down from the board of directors to senior management,
Right.
to every single one in the company. But you can control how the damage, how those damages going to do to your operation, to your customers, or to the company. So if we're talking about a solid post breach strategy, it's going to start, as I said, with preparation. How you are prepared, and that will include that you need to have a detailed incident response plan. You need to have well defined roles for everybody, like from a stakeholder perspective, whether they are internally or externally, because sometimes we are using uh, external vendors to help us with
Hmm.
some of the strategies, some of the tools they have. We need to have a regular tabletop exercise, and also we need to test our backups, because that's important. That in the past it happened that was in a company, we never tested our backups, and then when we need them,
Hmm.
we had some kind of breach. We were not able to retrieve the data. So
Right.
that
Right.
was, a big problem. So testing your backup, I think, it's crucial. I think the
Hmm.
goal here is to understand that we need to be more prepared how to detect earlier,
Hmm.
and how to isolate quickly, and then how to recover with minimal disruption. And
Hmm.
that will need, to, and this is why I'm talking about in the beginning when I said, well, you need to have defense and depth, because when the first line of defense they fail, then there are certain different layers that they're gonna help you, you know with those failures. And that when we say we need to detect earlier, that detecting earlier, and we have seen in some cases in the in the industry, there were some companies did not know about any uh, that there's somebody sitting in their network. They knew about it after 6 months or nine
Oh
months.
man.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't want to
A
mention
lot of
names in
time to
this
do damage.
show. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to mention names in this show, but I think the
Yeah. Of
audience, they
course.
know some of those cases when
Hmm.
you were not able to detect, and then they start, when sometimes when the attacker or the bad actor start approaching you, showing you that they have access to your data, and then you start thinking, oh my God, what's going on? Why those guys they
Hmm.
have access? And they start for the ransomware. So as I said, those preparation, those are incident response plans, the exercise, the threat scenarios, doing a lot of, as I said, being on top of vulnerability management and penetration testing. That will help to tell you, okay, where the things are working and where are the things that are not working in your organization. Be
Hmm.
more proactive. If something happened, well, how I'm going to respond to it. Now, if we done it poorly, if we don't have everything I said before, what's going to happen? We're going to see confusion. Everybody's confused. We don't know what's happening.
Hmm.
How those people they get access to our data? How if those people they still in my network, in my environment? No clear communication internally or even externally to because your client, your stakeholders, externally and internally, they are waiting for something for you. We have confusion about who's gonna talk to our customers. And I have experience in the past that as people they went to the media and they spoke about a breach, and unfortunately they did not check with us in security, and most of what they said were not true, and that they created panic
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
public, when because those people they just go there trying to make a statement to the public because a reporter they're asking them. And this is where I'm thinking about, when you don't have clear roles and responsibilities, who's going to talk to the media and what you need to tell them, especially if you are in the early stages of
Right.
responding and investigating. So that will do a lot of, this is going to delay the containment of the
Hmm.
breach. That will cause you a lot of confusion with the public, and meaning you're going to damage your reputation.
Right.
So one time, when we did it, we had like we tracked or we traced, sorry, an anomaly in one of our devices at the edge. I think it was unpatched. We isolated quickly from the network. We activated our incident response playbook. We kept it internally, our stakeholders, about every step we did. I cannot say it was perfectly done. Nothing going to be
Hmm.
perfect, but
Yeah.
at least it was controlled, it was
Right.
fast, and we were transparent. So this
Hmm.
is this is make it which I keep calling it. There's a big difference when you have a breach or you have a crisis. So you have to
Right.
you have to choose. Do you want to have a breach? Then you can really minimize, as I said, the risk, and you can, and the disruption, and then you can recover. Or you want to create a crisis to yourself that is going to be
Yeah.
very hard to recover from it, or it's going to take
Yeah.
time even to recover, and the damages is going to last for long.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. So to again sort of put a pin in a couple of things you said that I think are great takeaways for the audience. One, you kept mentioning tabletop. However your organization calls this or does this, some war gaming, whatever role play, essentially. These threats. There's a lot of known threats, even if there's a 0 day kind of threat that we don't know exactly. You have the contours of what's going to happen,
Yes.
right? Someone has gotten in, and so when you do that, you end up being able to know, oh, we have a hole here. I love how you said, like, there was backup systems and no one had turned the backup systems on in a while, and just so I think running through all of that, and then the second thing that I think it seems to me you're getting at, that I think is a point driving home, is that you're speaking as a CISO, right, in the C suite. But some of this really does need to come from the very top down. You have to have your CEO on board. You have to have the board members aware of this, right? So it's whatever your level, if you're a CISO, if you're someone reporting to a CISO, I think you have it seems to me, a job of making sure that the C suite entirely understands this, because when this happens, a lot of what they need to be prepared to do is going to come not just from the security team, but from the company at large, right?
Right. This is a great point, and I think that kind of I must say, we need to have a clear communication between the CISO, the board of the directors, and the senior management.
Hmm.
So should be a lot of communication, and that communication should, resonate with when let me call it, maybe a coaching them, because I cannot expect everybody that they are technical or they
Right.
understand well, maybe, of cybersecurity. So security as cybersecurity, everybody should resonate in their mind in the companies, and that has to start from the top, from the board of the directors. That security, it's a journey and not a destination.
Right.
Because
It's a
I
great
think
point.
sometimes some board members ask, okay, do we think we are
Mm.
secure enough today?
Right.
Are we good? Are we going to be hit tomorrow by ransomware? And that's something any CISO cannot answer, because the job of the CISO, it's doing it every day as a journey, but that
Hmm.
journey will never have a destination.
Right.
So there is no finish line for it, because the
Hmm.
end goal of this is going to be a secure, a cybersecurity strategy to build a system that can absorb any shocks. You
Right.
can recover quickly, and you can keep that operation under pressure, which means you need to align this security with the business objectives to protect what really, the crown jewels of the business and what really matter to the business, whether this is going to be during an attack or during a system failure or even a regulatory shift.
Hmm.
So the security resilience we are talking about it here today is not going to be a CISO job, because it cannot be done by a CISO or his team, although maybe he
Right.
could have maybe a big team. So the entire suite of the executive team, and as I mentioned, starting from the board of director, they have to play that role. The
Right.
CFO, they have to ensure that the security, they have the budget, because security is enabler for the business. The CEO, they need to make sure that they integrate the security into their operation. Even the chief marketing officer, the same. You need to protect the brand, because, as I said, you can
Hmm.
spend tons of millions of dollars on your company brand without having in mind, well, what let's think about security. How are we going to integrate that? How are we going to protect our brand? And then a ransomware happen, a breach happen, and the company, they lose the the customer, the consumers, they lose this kind of trust in that brand. So you wasted millions of dollars to promote that brand, and one ransomware could put you out of the business. So this
Right.
is how I think the board, they need to have the set the tune of the top. We keep saying from a security as a culture, and they have to cascade it down to everyone in the company that security is the responsibility of everyone in the company. They have to play a role in it, which meaning we're going to link cybersecurity more into the enterprise risk and governance.
Hmm.
And then when security is more embedded in in the board of director decisions and senior management decision, it make it more security part of the organization DNA. Because everything we think about it from a security perspective, and this is will make it more sustainable, operational, not reactive.
Hmm.
So I think we are talking here about shared accountability.
Right.
It's more important to make any cybersecurity more into cybersecurity culture in the company. As I said, because we need security to be enabler. It's not just thinking about it. Oh, security is a cost center. They need a lot of money. No, don't think about it. Think about security is important as your enabler for the business to protect your business, to protect your investment, to protect your brand. That's
Right.
how we should thinking about cybersecurity. It's not like a checkbox. It's not a compliance thing that oh my God, we need to do it because it's a regulatory thing. But think about it is more about it how it's going to enable your business, how it's going to
Hmm.
protect your investment.
Absolutely. And certainly that's true for any enterprise with any kind of customer. But in the submarine cable business in particular, what you're selling is secure transport, right? To those, so there's an extra level of the entirety of the brand is about that. It's not something peripheral to what you're doing, right? So
Yeah, as I told you, as I'm telling you, because people now, if they're gonna come to you, they're gonna come to you based on the trust of you are selling them a trusted or a secure product. If they lose that trust, then meaning you are losing your business.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so Ferris, let's close out the last section here with looking towards the future of security. I think the world is getting more and more complex in these ways every single day. So I want to talk about AI and quantum. Let's start with AI. Maybe how do you see AI specifically impacting the threat landscape? I think that there's a bunch of different ways to look at this in terms of just AI, as security breaches, the more AI is running the network. But how do you see it as the CISO of a submarine cable business?
So as you know, AI now they are making cybersecurity more dynamic,
Hmm.
meaning we are seeing more a machine generating phishing. We are seeing more adaptive malware.
Right.
So we are seeing more bots that they can mimic end user behavioral, and that will show a lot of accuracy. And the defense side, I think we need to think about AI, how it can help us to analyze vast telemetry and how to
Hmm.
detect those patterns we are missing and
Right.
respond in real time.
So you don't have to have an engineer at the knock looking at nodes. You can that's a lot of stuff that you can train an AI
Yes,
to do, for
yeah,
example.
AI
Yeah.
can do it because there is a lot. So AI, as you know, they are based on large language models. We call them LLMS
Hmm.
and autonomous systems. They are not just influencing how we are protecting data, but more it's transforming the meaning of how to do the trust and the control and the defense as part of the AI. So the
Hmm.
question today for the leaders uh, is not will AI impact security, but how we must govern security where the AI is the co-pilot. Now
Hmm.
it's a big change. It's a big change. I think towards 2030 we're going to see a lot of changes. That everything is we are doing now. I think most of it is going to be outdated when we talk about how AI from the bad actors perspective, the offensive, and even from the defensive perspective.
That is the thing about the place that we're in right now in the industry is that on the one hand it's exciting because there's a lot of new things happening, a lot of new things to wrap your head around. It's also kind of daunting, right? That the network might look entirely different in 5 years from now. It's really hard to know, right? So
Yeah, I think what we need to be prepared on the mindset because I think also AI they have to change the mindset of people how they are thinking about AI across the teams in the company, because they need to understand how AI works from a model perspective, where the bias can happen or can occur, and how AI can be leveraged or defended against. I think which
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
this is more important, because now AI, they're gonna look at everything, automate it, respond to it. But the issue here is we have somebody to look at it, making sure there are no bias, making sure that AI is making the right decision. So it's more about, we still need the human factor there,
Yeah, absolutely.
to
Yeah.
verify what the AI is doing.
Which is, I mean, that's true across the board with AI in terms of how anyone can leverage it. It's always alongside a human who is looking to get help with finding these answers. But I think certainly in security, that's an even greater challenge in the sense that it's coming from both directions, right? So you need to the network team is going to be using AI more and more. You need to make sure that that's being done in a safe way. Then the bad actors are using AI more and more. So you need to have AI that's designed to deal with the bad actors' AI, right? So it seems quite complicated quickly.
Yeah, because it's a race, right? Let me call it's a
Right.
race.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this is the problem. Sometimes, and what's happening right now, I feel the race now, it's in the favor of the offensive, when people
Of
are using
course.
it as offensive,
Yeah.
rather than in the defensive side. So using both sides, they're going to use AI, but it all depends how you're going to be uh, more. I think using it in your defense, the way you are investing on it, the more you understand how AI should work,
Hmm.
and that it's not like we are not focusing on having data scientists in every company, or how many
Right.
data scientists we're going to have, but more it's about the governance, how we govern this, how the human
Hmm.
factor is going to play, how we understand the role of AI in defensive, and then how we start thinking about it to trust it, because towards 2030 everyone's going to know, and AI was able to detect and respond to those threats, but now they're going to ask human about it. Well, how are we going to, what exactly are you trusting, this is doing the right thing, is there is any bias? So those are the questions. It's going to be more, I think, from a governance perspective, I think most so sweet is going to ask the people running the show, very
Hmm.
very soon in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we have that threat, but then there's there's an potentially even more complicated one with quantum. Can you tell us, just first, you're as a long term security professional in the industry, how do you see quantum developing? Are we close? Is this something that you really are already thinking about? And then the second part of my question is, whenever quantum may develop, what do you need to think about now, assuming that it will? So even if it takes 10, 15 years for quantum to be at the point where bad actors might have it and be able to decrypt things, are there steps we need to take now thinking about that eventual possibility?
Correct. So in my opinion, quantum is a longer horizon risk than it's critical.
Okay,
So
that's good. Yeah,
yeah, it's a
good
long
to hear.
horizon.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Hmm.
don't know. I mean, I can, maybe it could be 5 years, could be by 2030, could be.
Hmm.
It's very hard to put time frame on it, but it's critical. So because it has a potential to break widely all the encryption methods that
Right.
today.
Everything that we've ever done could be gone in an
Correct.
instant. Right. So yeah.
Yeah, so it can, expose everything, from customers' data to even to the integrity of our VPNs, because VPN,
Hmm.
they build
Right.
on encryption.
Right.
So we call it harvest now, decrypt later. So the
Mhm.
attacker, they're gonna
Right.
have already a concern where the attackers, they're gonna steal those encrypted data today,
Hmm.
and they have to. So I think the mindset, as I said, the mind shift. So today we have a worry or saying, well, I know I'm trying to focus where the attackers, they're gonna steal the encrypted data today, but tomorrow, in the long, as I said, in the long horizon, is gonna be. You need to expect it. It's gonna be everything cracked with the quantum.
Right.
So
Right.
that, I think, where is the challenge. So how we gonna do about it quantum today? I think it's important to do the risk assessment. I call it quantum risk assessment. Now, if you tell me now, okay, practical. I don't want to don't give me a theory. Give me practical steps. What
Right.
should I do
Right.
today? And I have done it. I think 2 years ago with some organizations I was working with. We started with a risk assessment.
Hmm.
And there are a lot now. I think you can use some templates, boilerplates to do risk assessment. Because to me, because I think the point here, what I have seen in big organizations, they don't know where their critical data resides, where exactly
Hmm.
they are stored. So,
Hmm.
which means if today we start, at least I know where's my critical data is stored, how long it needs to be protected, and what exactly the cryptographic systems I'm relying on for protection. Which means also I need to engage the working vendors I am for any for the post quantum crypto plans and test if there is any resistant algorithms in their isolated environment. I know some vendors, without mentioning names, they are saying, well, they have a quantum resistant algorithms, but
Hmm.
how true it is, as I said, you need to engage them, work with them, and try to understand their plan.
And we might not know whether that's true until we have quantum to test it and
Yes.
find it out, right? So yeah.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. Be proactive for the company. Do the assessment today. There are some templates that's going to help you engage your vendors, your critical vendors, understand the data flow, the data flow in your organization. Where are those? How longer you need to? Because some organization they have, I think they have data forever. They keep data. They store data forever. You don't need to store
Right.
data that you don't need forever because that's you're increasing, your risk. So that's what I'm saying. Well, understand more, put more governance into that, and that assessment will, day by day, make you more prepared for it when it happens. So you have
Hmm.
to be more proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it could be quite a long time from now, but it doesn't mean that that it's not a threat to your long term survival even right now. So yeah.
Yeah, it has to be part of your strategy. And I said, how we gonna to so what you're gonna do about today about this strategy? You're gonna do your assessment. Because when you start looking and asking yourself the questions, where are my critical data is, where it's stored, how long it need to be protected, you start doing the right thing by being more resilient. You have more defense and depth inside your organization, and you are maturing it. You are not maturing it just for the because quantum is not going to happen tomorrow, but
Right.
that's make more prepared for you when something happens. You're not going to be surprised.
Hmm. Hmm. That's a great point. Like, in other words, like none of this is in isolation. Anything that you do preparing for quantum is going to improve your current security situation. Even just like you say, knowing exactly where all of your data is located, the situation that it's in, all of that's crucial to standard old threats, not just quantum, right? So
Right.
yeah, excellent. All right, Ferris, we're running out of time, but just before we go, I just want to see if you could, give us a review of really the key takeaways that you think that are particularly for submarine cables, but a lot of this really is across the cybersecurity world that that you see developing and need attention for the rest of this decade, say the next 5 years.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the rest of this decade we are living, it's going to be more shaped by AI-driven threats,
Hmm.
more regulatory enforcement, and more underwater infrastructure becoming a battleground. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the first point. I think
Yeah,
we need to
yeah,
think about more AI-driven threats, more regulatory enforcement, and more underwater infrastructure becoming a battleground. Now, I think cyber threat we have to understand it becomes more automated. It becomes faster, harder even to detect. So we need really to invest more in the AI-driven defenses that evolve just as quickly. Now, the regulations, as we mentioned during the podcast, they are catching up, especially in the critical infrastructure and the submarines. We are talking submarine cables, and I think my takeaway here for organizations that they have to treat compliance as a strategic enabler, not just a
mm-hmm.
checkbox. If you do it just a checkbox, it's not going to do yourself any favor. Do compliance more as a strategic enabler.
Right.
Now, resilience, we keep talking about it. It's not really something nice to have. It's more crucial, to have. It's not an option. It's a must today because it's not about just defending the attacks, but more you are building systems, you are building culture inside the company that they can adapt, they can recover and lead in the face of disruption. And security resilience, as I mentioned earlier, it's not going to be one person. It's not going to be just the office of the CISO. It's going to be more a boardroom level responsibility. When every executive in the company, when every board of director, they understand cyber risk is a business risk. Now security becomes more a shared value, not a silo. And for us, we are tuning in. It's not just about the fiber optics. It's more about securing the backbone of our digital civilization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a pretty big task. So I'm glad you guys are on it. Yeah, yeah,
So that I
excellent.
think the quickly, because we are running of the time. The quick takeaway for me to say that we have to come together to do this, and everybody has to understand the role and responsibility. Because again, I mean, we as a security, I think voice. I keep saying, well, think about security or cybersecurity risk as a business risk. Don't think about them as IT risk. If you still think about IT risk, meaning you're still living in 2015, 16, you're not in 2025. In 2025, you have to understand cybersecurity risk is a business risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great note to end on. So thanks for all of your insight. That was great. I learned a lot. How can listeners keep up with you or find you if they're interested?
So I am on LinkedIn. They can go in LinkedIn under Ferris Adi, FERRIS, last name ADI. I share thoughts on cyber security risk strategy and emerging technology, including AI and quantum. So please feel free to connect with me and reach out if you want to continue any of this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage all the listeners to ask questions. That's how, as you've been saying this whole time, this theme is communication, transparency. Even if you're not in cybersecurity, you have to understand these things for whatever part of the business you're in. So excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, Ferris. That was great.
Thank you again for having me. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Telegeography Explains the Internet comes from the experts here at Telegeography. It's edited and produced by Jane Miller, and it's hosted by me, Greg Bryan. And I also wrote that theme song you're listening to right now. To learn more about our data, jump over to telegeography.com, and we'll see you on the internet.